Welcome to the Real Estate Agent Superstars podcast. I'm your host, RJ Baxter with Intercap Lending, and I have an awesome guest for you today, Kathy Haas of Colorado Realty for Less. Kathy has been in the top 1% of real estate agents in the Denver area for the past 2 years through the Mile High Leaders Group. And she's also been honored with being in the top 10% with the Pikes Peak Association of Realtors over the past year. So she is definitely crushing it. And she's going to share with us specifically what her strategy has been to do so much business over the past couple of years. So welcome to the show, Kathy. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks, RJ. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. Are you a Colorado native or did you come from somewhere else?
I'm about as close to a Colorado native, I guess, as you can be without being a Colorado native. My parents moved here when I was 1.5 years old. I was raised in the Denver metro area, graduated from Cherry Creek High School. Go Bruins.
Okay.
Spent a little bit of time traveling back and forth trying to figure out if I wanted to be here in California. So I spent some time out in California when I was younger. Then moved back to and lived in Winter Park, which RJ and I have a kind of a kindred soul for both of us. I lived in Winter Park for 25 years, married a builder, started building homes, got divorced, moved out, became a teacher, flipped homes, decided I didn't want to teach anymore during COVID, and decided to get my real estate license since it's something I'd been doing my whole life.
Awesome. So you're new in the business.
I am. As of this June, I will have had my license for 3 years.
Interesting. I didn't know that about you. I thought you'd been at this for longer.
Nope. Associated with it in all types of means, but just not licensed.
Okay. Interesting. So why real estate in particular? Just always an interest in real estate or?
Always a huge interest. I love, like I said, as a single mom and a teacher, I spent over 6 years flipping houses. Every 2 years, that's what my summer job was I'd flip houses and sell houses, and that's how I earned my equity. So just the bouncing and the changing markets and the changing environments, it's always exciting to me. So always keeps me on my toes, which I like to be on my toes. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a fun business. So it sounds like as soon as you were able to, after a couple of years, you started your own brokerage, right? Colorado Realty for Less is your brokerage.
correct. I was working under a brokerage and decided that best interest for myself and my family and relocating to the western slope of Colorado, although I do serve all of Colorado, seemed to serve myself better by going out on my own.
Yeah. Because you are where are you located? Where's your primary area?
My primary office is in Morrison for the moment. We are relocating out near Grand Junction, so we'll be serving Denver Metro and Western Slope. My specialty areas are kind of the I-70 corridor, the mountain regions, Vail, Summit, and I serve Aspen as well.
Okay. So I wanted to have you on because you took an interesting approach to when you started your brokerage, and you're very busy. I hear the phone ringing there.
Sorry.
You-
Turn that off.
For those of you listening, Kathy shared with me off camera that she actually, is it this week or last week, put 10 listings in, something like that.
Correct.
So something you're doing is working.
Correct.
And that's why I wanted to have you on to talk about what it is you're doing, what's unique about your brokerage, because there's a reason why you called it Colorado Realty for Less, right?
There is. So part of my journey in getting my real estate license and how I got to this point was, as a teacher, you might all know that teachers do not make the most money out of any profession that's chosen.
That's my previous profession too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know.
What'd you teach?
I didn't, in Colorado, I just subbed, and then I was a middle school English teacher, but not for very long.
Middle school and high school here. So there you go.
Nice. All right.
Yeah. And so I earned my money and equity and built up my, equity that I had and my money flipping houses. So then I thought, well, there's some people that want to have their hand held through these processes, but I had bought and sold so many properties and was married to a builder that I felt that I knew enough that I could help myself to a certain extent. So I sought out a flat fee real estate agent and have never turned back since.
Okay. So that's kind of the idea behind how you started your brokerage.
Correct. So
Flat.
I think we talked about it a little bit before, but in regards to what a flat fee agent is that, we just don't, I liken it kind of like, I guess, to a car wash. Some people like to, on the weekend or if day they have off, go to Starbucks, get their coffee and take their car to the car wash and sit, inside and watch their car be washed. And other people like to go to a physical car wash and wash their own car. And I don't think that flat fee agents will ever replace full service agents because there are some parts and pieces to the process that I don't do that a full service agent would do. So I think that there's room for both types of services out there because I believe that some services work for some people and some don't want full service. So it's just another option for
Right.
people that I work with a lot of flippers. I work with a lot of attorneys. I work with a lot of builders, people that already have a lot of knowledge. And then I also work with some people that just find me and say like, help me, Kathy. And by the time we're done, I feel like I like to empower people to learn about the process, not just walk through it. I think it's important for people to understand what they're doing and how it's being done, since it's probably their biggest investment of their life.
Yeah, yeah. So you help people and teach them how to do it, and they do a lot of the stuff on their own, and that's how you're able to do it with the flat fee or the lower cost model.
I do. A lot of times when agents say that they add this or that pictures or staging or this or that, what I do is just pass on that information to my clients. I allow them to make their own personal decisions with what they choose to do and not do. And then I guide them through the contractual process and the sale.
Okay, okay. So it seems to be working really well for you. When did you start the brokerage on your own?
January.
January, and you're already crushing it. So it sounds like something clicked.
Yeah, and a lot of hard work, a lot of hours plugging on Facebook, plugging on Instagram, reaching out to previous clients. I'm busy 24/7. It's not
Okay.
just doesn't just come easy.
So, so tell me more about that. Like what all these different channels you're talking about, social media, past clients. What's been your best source, would you say?
I think a little bit of everything. I get clients from from social media. I get a lot of referrals from my clients, which is super helpful and awesome of them. Also just driving, SEO on Google, which is a lot harder now, as you'll know, in finance.
Yeah.
With realtors everywhere and everybody doing thing and everybody having different models, it's pretty hard to climb up on an SEO Google search. But I feel like I'm up there with most of the national companies, which is also something I think that we thought we would talk about today as well. So we will hit that, I guess, at some point.
Yeah. Well, let's hit it now. I mean, I was actually going to ask about that. So why did you decide to do it on your own instead of joining a larger discount agency like Assist to Sell, for example, or one of these lower cost models?
So I have in the past, and I still do, work for some of those affiliated companies. There's companies such as Houseo, Flat Fee Group. I mean, you can Google and find just if you Google MLS, you could just about find anything. MLS My Home, FSBO.com. There's probably 20 or 30 of them nationwide. And I do still represent quite a few of them. However, in Colorado, we are known as what is called a limited service state. And a lot of people don't know this. I get phone calls from people in Texas and other states, and they're like, we sell flat fee all the time. We pay $199 and that's it. And I said, well, that's because you haven't sold a house in Colorado. And Colorado happens to be one of, I believe, 3 or 4 states left in the United States that we, as licensed realtors, are required to perform a minimum service, which means we have to follow the contract through all the contractual processes, all of the inspections, appraisals, title. That is our job here in Colorado. In other states, you can pay $199 and an agent will throw your listing on the MLS and off you go. People call you, and that's called that is a flat fee service. That is no involvement. It is called an entry only listing. And the Colorado Commission has already shut down a few companies and put some heavy fines on some of them that were trying to break into Colorado during the past few years. But ultimately, people still, I get calls from people all the time. There's got to be a better way. And I'm like, trust me, I'm trying to do the best way that I can with the work that I have to do. But, all these other upfront companies, like you said, any of them, they charge an upfront fee and then they farm you out to a real estate agent who charges you more. So I guess my point is for people in Colorado is there's no reason to pay an upfront fee because they are not representing you.
Right.
Clever and Upnest do have representations, and I also work with them as well. But there's a higher fee involved as well because they're a corporation and they have to charge more. Being that it's just myself and one of my friends, actually, RJ in Winter Park, we're able to do it for a lot less because we don't have a lot of overhead to charge people. So,
Okay, well that's interesting. So, in other words, if you were to try to do it for $199 per contract, that would not work. It might not be a very good business model.
No, a lot of those companies work nationwide. So if they get 5 or 10 listings from each state, it's a different picture because they're not actually doing the work. They're just collecting advertisements and leads. So, there's still a lot of work involved. Agents aren't lying when we work hard. We work hard. It might not be sitting at your house. Like I said, I'm not the person that's going to bring you flowers or come shovel your driveway but I am an amazing negotiator, and I think I have a very cordial personality because I'm more like the average person, I think, just coming not from such a huge real estate background, but having the knowledge of real estate as my background, that I feel I'm able to better connect with people and help them on a normal level that a lot of times there's smoke and mirrors about selling a house, but there doesn't have to be. And some people really don't want anything to do with selling their house. I have friends that don't want to use me because they don't want to do any work. So again, it's just what your personal preference is, I think.
Yeah. And that's why you think the full service model will go away because some people want that.
I think that there's a lot of people that say that it will, but it won't. It would take a lot. Because like I said, there's some people that prioritize things differently. And if you're running a multi-million-dollar corporation and you need to sell a house somewhere, then your priority is probably not going to be finding a photographer.
Right. Well, that kind of goes. I was curious what you think about. There's a lot of talk about these huge companies like Zillow or whoever it is taking over the industry, and then the individual real estate agent will go away. What do you think about that? Do you think that's something that could happen down the road?
I've thought about it a lot over the past few years. I think that the bigger companies that we see will downsize. I think just like any other corporations, like Bed Bath & Beyond just announced that they're closing their doors. I think the traditional brick and mortar and some of those traditional models will probably see changing over the next 5 to 10 years. I do think that a lot of the companies that are coming in, like I think I saw one on TV, it's called 72 Sold or something, and Orchard, like these companies. Yeah, these companies that are coming in and offering sellers cash for their house so that they don't, they're able to surpass the potential of having a contingency on their home or this and that. I think that all of those models are attracting people. However, I will also warn people that, you get what you pay for. A lot of times they take back end fees. Read your contracts. There's a lot of fees involved that people don't look at, and they call me and they're like, oh, I don't know about this. I'm like, well, read your contract or have somebody read your contract for you. Because it sounds good on paper, but sometimes it's not always what it's cracked up to be. But I do think they're going to be bigger in the game, though, in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So what can agents now do to stay relevant? I mean, one thing is to do something like what you're doing. What else can people do to stay relevant and make sure they continue to do a strong business.
I think that the most important thing in what I do is my relationships with people. I don't make them feel like, like a lot of times when people, agents show houses or whatever, or, call me about the house. I don't know about your house. You live in your house. You're the expert on your house. I'm not the expert on your house. So I think that trying to make people feel empowered is a part of the transaction is the most important thing. When you isolate them or say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, you're not telling them, you're just telling them what you're going to do. You're not telling what you're going to do for them. And I think that keeping them in the equation is very important. And a lot of people don't believe that, but I do.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's all about that personal relationship and making sure you're going that extra mile for the client.
And a lot of people say, oh, if you get a flat fee, be careful, you get what you pay for. Well, I just tell people, well, look at my track record and look at my reviews and call me.
Yeah.
Because I will give you the same service on $1 million home for 5,000 that somebody will for 20. It's just like I said, I can cut a few more corners and make it doable for everybody. So
Gotcha. So your model is a flat fee regardless of the price, or is it based on a percentage?
it is based on a percentage. I do have a scale. So for lower homes, I charge less, and my maximum is 5,000. So it ranges from about 1,500 to $5,000 per listing. And then, like I said, some other companies that I've worked for, there was upfront fees. There was charges every time you wanted to make a change. There was a charge. There was a lot of companies charge a transaction coordinator fee. A lot of companies charge for additional photos. You see it all. Like I said, just when you think you're getting a deal, all of a sudden you're up to 2 or 3% listing
Right.
almost,
Yeah. They just
depending on the cost of your home before you know it.
yeah.
Voila.
Yep. Yep.
So I pride myself on there's no transaction coordinator fees. There's no charges, nothing. So I do conduct
Yeah.
myself pretty much in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. So this thing's ramped up quickly for you. Tell me about like what are you working on right now that's really pressing? What kinds of obstacles have you run into?
Most of the obstacles, like I said, are with advertising. I think being a smaller company, it's hard to compete with the larger companies. So I hope that in the coming years that this, it'll kind of start evening out a little bit where the bigger companies are giving up some things to come more towards consumer, caring about the consumer and will come up a little bit more and be able to make some more money to be able to compete on that level. I know I talk to a lot of luxury homeowners that, feel that they want to be in magazines and things like that. So I guess part of my goal is to figure out how to help luxury homeowners get the same services that the super big companies are able to provide that we're not. Um,
Mhm.
that can sell a home potentially, especially in other markets like bigger cities like Chicago, Miami, those agencies getting those calls from people looking for those properties. But ultimately, it's exposure. And you went back to Zillow before, and it's funny. This is how I acquired the property that I just purchased now. But a couple years ago, Zillow made this shift to where it was you would have a listing saying like 29 agent listings, and then right next to that it said one other. So that other has thrown people off. Like, what is this other? Well, Zillow now is a company just like anybody else. So technically, they're not allowed to list FSBOs. So I've been working a lot on trying to help those people like understand that. So that's another one of my goals. So I guess to sum it up, trying to figure out how to help luxury clients a little bit more and trying to figure out how to help FSBOs a little bit more and how to help them understand that this process in Colorado is just different and it just is. And there's nothing we can do about it. So
Yeah. Yeah. So are you what does your team look like? Are you building a team? Are you trying to add agents, add support people? What does that look like?
Um, right now, no. Right now, I'm just trying to, I think, work out all my glitches and, just running across things that I see that aren't fitting with what I thought they would be. I would hope going into next year that I can start reaching out to other people across the state and helping them get on board with how to figure this out as well. And like I said, it's not for everyone. It's not. It's a lot of hard work. And trust me, I've seen big tickets come through with $120,000 commission, and I'm sitting on my 5 going, what am I doing? However, I still believe that what I'm doing is the right thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome that you believe.
and it's
That's
10
so
listings
cool.
versus 1 too. I deal with a lot of listings. So
Yeah. Yeah. Do you work with buyers too?
I do. And that's one thing, I guess. Yeah, I'd like to be able to expand into buyers a little bit more into the next year. I think I was just too busy to focus on that this year per se, but we also offer buyer rebates as well. And that is also based on educating people on how to help themselves. I mean, pretty much, what I hear from a lot of my clients is, why should I pay a real estate agent 2.8% commission to bring a buyer? All a buyer does is look at Zillow, and then they call them, and then they see a house. And I said, well, it's not quite that simple. I did just, sell a large house to someone who said, Kathy, I've been working with these people for 2 years. So some of the sellers don't see that as being part of the equation, but we do offer a buyer's agent commission of up to 1% for any of our buyers. So that definitely helps people right now with buy down points, closing costs, anything of that nature. And that amount goes down from 1% based on the amount of time we spend with people looking at houses. So a lot of the investors and flippers I work with will call me and say, like, they have a house targeted. Kathy, can you put an offer in on this house? Absolutely. So I write it up. They get 1% of my commission for me writing it up and helping them through the transaction. So again, it's more, if you're willing to help yourself, we can put more money in your pocket even as a buyer. So
Okay. Nice. Have you heard about this legislation they're proposing um, where the buyer has to pay their agent directly instead of the listing side paying it?
yeah, I have very mixed emotions about that. But the biggest feeling that I have about that breaks my heart a little bit is I feel that it would potentially or is going to create an even bigger um them versus us type of scenario. I don't see how people that can barely afford to buy a home and can barely get into a home as a first time buyer or a teacher or a um, firefighter, anybody in public service. The fact that they have to put down $10,000 or $20,000 to purchase a home, I don't see how they're going to be able to come up with an additional 2 to 3% to pay a buyer's agent. And I argue with that a lot with my sellers, but I just feel that it's going, if it happens and if it occurs, which it's leaning that way in a lot of places for a lot of different reasons, but I think it's going to create an even bigger divide between the haves and have-nots. And that breaks my heart.
I agree 100%. The legislation takes effect and something creative happens that enables them to still somehow make it work. But yeah, people are tight, especially now. I mean, we see it every day on the lending side where people are, really strapped and pushing the limit sometimes to qualify.
Yeah.
So,
and adding extra money to their loan to even get the money to close.
yeah, down payment assistance or whatever it is. So it's just, yeah, that could be very frustrating if that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your plans the next 90 days? What are you going to do to keep your sanity?
Just keep doing what I do. I mostly right now my focus is, like I said, on helping FSBO clients try to understand how the climate is a little bit different here in Colorado. A lot of people still, most FSBOs are the reason that they're selling FSBO 90% of the time is because they don't like real estate agents.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I know I am one, but I try to be a little bit different. They've just, for whatever reason, they're soured on the process. They don't, believe in this and that. And once in a while I can convince them differently and sometimes I cannot. And once in a while I get a call 3 months down the road saying all they do is get calls from realtors. Can you please help me? So My focus is mostly on my FSBO clients through the next 90 days.
Okay. Okay. And have you seen a uptick in activity heading into the summer here?
I think we had a good month back. Gosh, what is this now? End of April. I think that end of February, March was really strong. We had a really nice surge. I think the past month, this month is I've had a lot of closings, but I think that was because of what happened in February and March. I think we've had a very slow start to the spring, not necessarily with listings, but with buyers willing and wanting to pull the trigger. I see a lot more of my deals going under contract and then going out of contract.
Mhm.
I think because buyers, get cold feet, they get maybe talked into something and they're like, oh, I didn't know about I didn't know it would be this much. I think that buyers are scared right now. I think that buyers are able to be picky right now. And I think even though technically it's kind of still a seller's market, that sellers have to realize that they're not going to see the outcome that they did a year ago.
Absolutely. I agree.
I mean, the inventory's still down, but that doesn't mean that just because you're the only house in the neighborhood, you're going to get 200,000 more than you did, than your neighbor did 6 months ago. So I think as long as sellers can start seeing that and understand where the buyers are coming from, that we will see sales pick up again in May. And rumor has it, RJ, I'm not sure, but that the rates might be going down a little to help people out this spring.
Well, I definitely have an opinion on that. And by the time this episode comes out, it'll probably be mid-May anyway. There's a key date coming up in May 10th, where the CPI data is getting released. And the thing, I've talked about this repeatedly on my videos and different interviews. And the thing with inflation is it's a 12-month look back on the data. So they take all of the previous 12 months and they tally that all up, and that's the number. And that's what the Fed's looking at. So it's like they're looking in the rearview mirror as to what inflation is. And what happens is each month the number is reported, and then they take off the number from 13 months ago and replace it with the current number. So I was actually just watching a video before this interview about it. And as they replace that higher inflation data from a year ago, it'll just naturally come down based on the fact that the current month over month numbers are lower. So even if inflation doesn't quote unquote go down over the next 6 months, inflation is going to go down as far as the number that's reported. And in a lower inflation environment, that leads to lower rates historically. So it's
Good news, buyers.
yeah, I mean,
Hopefully.
yeah. And they're looking at this May 10th date. It could be a key date as to the inflation numbers coming down a good enough margin that the Fed does something different. So we'll see.
Agreed. And I have had a few of my sellers that I've had that same conversation with. And I said, why don't we, wait and put it on the market? Let's roll the dice and get it a little bit closer to that May 10th date so that we don't end up sitting, too long before any great changes hopefully can occur. So
Totally. And the other thing too is people should not be afraid of recession, because that could happen. And housing's done historically really well in recessions. And if you're buying a home and it's your primary residence, you don't plan on moving, then, just ride the wave. If it goes down a little bit, no big deal. It'll go back up. I mean, historically, real estate has done that. So I think it's a great time for buyers and for sellers.
I think it was Einstein. I can't remember who made the quote, like, the worst mistake you ever made was not buying a house at the age of 5.
Right.
And that will hold true in any market. So
Yeah. Or the quote about planting a tree, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second.
yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, it's just so many stories. I'm sure you have them too, about people that decided to buy and they've got lots of equity now and it's changed their financial picture. So I think just getting the foot in the door, and before, other changes might happen, like the buyer paying for the agent's commission, it could change the landscape.
Yep. It sure can. Yeah. I mean, even as an agent, a realtor, I'm currently right in the middle of I'm like, I think I would know better, being in the market, but sure enough, I'm right in the middle of selling my own house and building another house in through all of this and fortunately got my rates locked in last year before they changed too
Oh,
dramatically,
good
but,
job.
I feel people's pain too, so I'm going through it right along with them. So I'm
Yeah.
like, "Am I crazy?" But we're in it, so we just have to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. So now that you're in your own brokerage, what's your favorite thing about what you do?
Is talking to people. One of my favorite questions or not so favorite question I get with every transaction is like, "Do you have a transaction coordinator?" I'm like, "No, I don't. It's just me." So if my sellers call me, they're gonna get me. If the buyer's agent calls me, they're gonna get me. If anybody involved in the transaction calls, they're gonna get me. I think transaction coordinators are super important for bigger offices because I don't know how they would function without them. But just being small and intimate, that's what we do.
Nice. Nice. And it's incredible too how you stay consistent with calling people, calling your past clients, staying in touch. You're just naturally great at that. How do you stay in that zone with how busy you are? I mean, putting 10 listings on in a week. I don't know how you find time.
Lots of early mornings. I have a tendency to be a night crawler, like 3 to 5 in the morning, and then rest, and then get back on it again when my phone starts ringing. But I guess word to new agents or any other agents, you either work late at night or you work early in the morning because once your phone starts ringing, it's a lot harder to stay focused on things that you have to do. And I think that
Sure.
being an ex teacher, another piece of advice I would give is I've heard a lot of teachers make really good real estate agents because we're super organized. And you don't burn yourself out. I spend like an hour a day on social media advertising. I spend an hour a day on SEO. I spend an hour a day on phone calls. So I don't sit all day to the point where I want to break down and cry because nobody's calling me back. I completely set up my calendar so that everything I'm doing is touching people in a different way every day. And I think that's really
I like that.
important too.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I'm in a coaching group and we get on a Zoom together and make phone calls every day. And it's in the morning because I found just from personal experience, if I put it off and don't join the group and I'll do it later, things just happen. By the time you get to afternoon, there's this file or that file or something personally happens outside of work or whatever, and things just go sideways. It never gets done unless you just knock it out right off the bat.
Yeah, and it's super frustrating too. And regardless, you just never know. Like people get frustrated with making phone calls or whatever, but you just never know when you're going to call that person that one day and they're going to be like, "Oh my gosh, Kathy, I totally forgot about you." And "Oh my gosh, we are listing our house next month." So great. You just never know. You never know where
Totally.
people are.
Yeah.
You can't expect people to remember things when they're moving around and working. So it's just important to stay in touch. And, a lot of my clients I'm very good friends with as well. So
Totally. And like, I'll just tell you my own experience. We call past clients every Wednesday. And it's a Wednesday right now. And I got done with that just before this interview. And every single week, there's at least one opportunity out of those phone calls. Like I have a guy that is a past client that wants to buy an investment property today. And if I wouldn't have been making those calls, I would probably not have, he might have forgotten about me or who knows what. So,
just gone through the listing agent or just, yeah, clicked on Zillow and came up with some other agent that pays Zillow.
right.
That's
Exactly.
that's a big frustration I hear from a lot of sellers is they're like, why is my name not on there? Why can't they call me? Why can't they call you? And I'm like, well, because some agents pay a lot of money to Zillow to have that privilege. So I don't know a way
Keep
around
them,
those things yet.
keep them on your home search app if you have one. So that and it's you on that listing. Teach them how to use it. I mean, if I was a real estate agent, that's what I'd be doing. I'd say, hey, here's my app. Here's how you find houses. And then it's me on there.
Exactly.
So people think they have to call Zillow to look at the house a lot of times. It's crazy.
Yeah. Or I mean, they have everything. Now they have lenders on Zillow too. You can click on a lender.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. So, well, thanks for being on, Kathy. It's just been awesome to learn more about what you're doing and
Sure.
sharing everything, your story and everything. So, really appreciate your time.
Thanks, RJ. It's good to see you. And hopefully we'll catch you up on the trails in Winter Park. Still got a lot of snow up there to do some cross country
Yes,
skiing.
totally. Or skinning up Mary Jane, maybe, and something like that.
Not much of a skinner these days. I barely have time to cross country ski. I think skinning would kill me,
Right.
but
Or about killing me every time I do it. Um, well, awesome. Well, thanks again. And if you're listening to this show and found value in this, please share it with other agents that you know so they can also learn from what Kathy shared with us today. And consider leaving us a 5-star review. That helps get the word out as well. And have a great rest of your day. Thanks again, Kathy.
thanks, RJ. Have a great day, everybody.